First time founder, I need more time. Second time founder, I need more focus. First time founder, I need to hire a head of sales. Second time founder, I am the head of sales. First time founder, let me show you what we've built. Second time founder, will you show me why this is a problem?
I did a quick search of percentage of population for high net worth. In the US, it's 2.2% of the population, coming out at 7.5 million high net worth individuals. In Australia, that's 0.9% of percentage of population and 234,000 individuals. So if we're just looking at that angel network of people who have the liquid assets that can potentially fund our startups, it's a huge disparity.
There has been commentary for a while that Aussie founders tend to exit much earlier than, say, a Silicon Valley counterpart. And it's because we're quite happy to walk away with 20 mil and live happily ever after because we value lifestyle and all these other things.
I think the takeaway here for investors is just anytime we have a new technology, there's always going to be a wave of bad actors. It's inevitable. Like right now it's AI, before that it was blockchain. Like you can plot this just going back.
Morning.
Morning.
How are we?
Bloody awesome. I was just thinking, for the poor listeners that don't get the video version, they don't get to see Don on the farm with his hat.
Like this is, imagine the most pretentious. Yeah, just imagine that. If you clocked it, like later on, I'll have my RM boots and my RM belt and
the farm with no livestock. Meanwhile, your house in Brizzy has livestock.
Yeah, it's like in the Wiggles. What is it? Wiggletown. Everything's opposite. What have you been up to, Ash?
Yeah, I've been busy. Just getting ready pitch decks for our next deal. And yeah, I've got a bit of travel planning for early next year. Going off to India for a friend's wedding. So just trying to start planning that and getting the outfit sorted. It's always the hard part for traditional weddings.
Any potential LPs you can try and attract while you're over there?
Look, I'm sure there's potential. I'm all for it.
Always be closing, Ash.
Exactly.
I had a quiet weekend, but work-wise, yeah, just full steam ahead, getting the next deal across the line. So Ash and I are into the memo.
What does your life consist of in post-rugby world?
Not a lot. And like the weather's not good enough to be sitting at the beach having a few beers. It's quite quiet at the moment.
Well, my news of the week is my back is functional again, thanks to the absolute magician that is Peter McIntyre, and unlocked all my spine and my glutes and hamstrings, and I'm running and feeling like I have not felt in a long time.
Yes, it's painful, and there are tears, but he gets you there.
Oh, it hurt. I still, like, my left butt cheek is just one massive bruise. It looks like I've been in a car accident.
I love his empathy as well.
What empathy exactly?
That's what I love. That's what I love about it. He's there to get a result.
Yeah.
And you just got to get it done.
Yeah. It's your job to tell me when the pain is too extreme that you can't tolerate it.
And it's his job to then ignore.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we got a big week with the deal we're finalizing that we're going to launch. It's an exciting one. I've been trying to learn Canva, and I thought I'd share my great skills with the team. And yeah, I won't be doing that again. I'll leave that to you, Ash. But I had like 2 arrows. Like, I thought it was amazing.
It was an A for effort.
Yeah, everyone gets a medal in this world.
After seeing what you sent to Ed Keelan, I was like really impressed with your Photoshop skills, Tom.
Yeah, well, they do teach these things in business school. Well, let's jump into things. Just a recap from a previous episode, we had discussed how Adir Shiffman had launched legal action against one of his portfolio companies, Sleeping Duck, and he lost that. But now it looks like he's now been ordered to pay Sleeping Duck founders costs, which, according to this article, Delaney noted that the evidence before him, so this is the Judge Delaney, put the costs to the co-founders at 2.9 million, and then another person's cost at 812,000. So that's going close to 4 million. Now you generally don't pay 100% of costs, but generally it's somewhere between 65% and 85%. I don't know Adir's personal situation, but that's a shitload of cash.
It is. And like, do you remember what he was actually seeking? I actually can't remember what it was, but I feel like this is a pretty high percentage of what he was going after.
So according to this, he sought the issuance or transfer of shares to make him the holder of 10% of all issued shares in Sleeping Duck, along with sufficient options to acquire a further 10% of all issued shares in the company. So that's what he was seeking. The article also states the first settlement offer in August 2022, so 2 years ago, was 4.3 million he was offered. The second, around 4.1 million, was made during the trial with a 20-hour deadline. Shiffman rejected those offers, and subsequently the judge called the rejection of those unreasonable. So the judges described him as unreasonable, and that's the judge's view, but now he'll have to stump up the costs. I assume there's an ability to appeal, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just looked at there was an article in the AFR in June. So at one point, Sleeping Duck was valued at 400 mil, but the court-ordered valuation put it at 45 mil in 2022.
Well, what's the lessons here? I guess shit happens. I don't know.
Is there a lesson?
Does everything have to have a lesson? Is that the lesson that we're...
Yep.
I think if there is a lesson, imagine we know how much money's been taken up here, but imagine the time that's been taken away from growing and building the Sleeping Duck business.
Yeah.
And that's why when we talk with portfolio companies all the time, this idea around trust and respect, because if you don't have that trust and respect, you get bogged down into these conflicts that just drain your energy away and you can't achieve shit.
Yeah, 100%. I think if there's any lesson, upside versus downside, at the point of receiving that 4 mil offer, measuring the additional upside versus the risk down.
And also, if you're still a shareholder, Don, to your point, at that point, would you not go, okay, I'm being compensated, let's get the founders back onto building the business so the rest of the equity I have doesn't just go down the toilet and it continues to increase in value?
Yeah, that's what a rational person should do, but when there's a breakdown of expectations and the relationship turns sour.
Yeah, rationality. If humans were deeply rational, we'd have time travel by now.
We probably wouldn't be in this game to start with.
Yeah. Anyway, take whatever lessons you think there are to learn there. Now, let's get into some current day stuff. I think we may have been, again, the only people in the ecosystem not at a large ecosystem event. And this one was the Startup Daily Awards that Simon Thompson and his crew put on.
It looked great.
Looked like a great event.
Yeah. I'll take one for the team next year.
270 guests at Sydney's Ivy Ballroom, had a certain synergy on a night where Startup Daily editor Simon Thompson, AWS head of startups John Kearney, and keynote speaker Maria McNamara spoke of hope, love, inspiration, and collaboration. I think that there's like groups of people that I think turn their nose up at awards generally, but one of the things I was surprised in my early journey with the companies that I had is that people do, like, customers look for external validation. And when you're able to enter and become a finalist and somebody else recognizes you, there is some value in developing your brand over time, especially if you're an early stage business, because people find it difficult taking a risk, taking a punt. But if you've got a third party saying, hey, we think this company's pretty good, there is actually, it's not huge, but there's some value in it.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. We won the Australian Telecommunications User Group Award once. We don't even know who nominated us.
Shit, that sounds like an exciting night. Oh, calm down.
Well, this was exactly like, I was like, do we even bother going to this thing? Like, these are not our people. And we went there reluctantly and ended up winning. But that badge that we then marketed the crap out of, that it just had some validation in the market that we were credible and our product was actually good and it did work. But these things do have a shelf life. Like the Chinese restaurant in Taree that still got the award for best restaurant 2012 in a regional town. You do start asking yourself what's happened since then.
Yeah, I love that. I thought the other great thing about awards is that from the external, sometimes you don't know when a founder needs a little boost, where their cup may be on the verge of empty. And I think Vicky Sterling was quite vulnerable in saying it's been a tough 12 months. And with the startup network, getting that satisfaction of going, oh, I am making an impact, sounds like it really gave her the boost that she needed to keep fighting. So I think it's also good to note as a founder that, yeah, throw your hat in the ring. You never know when you're going to get that external validation, but also just the team spirit and morale to go, yeah, let's keep fighting sometimes when you're a little bit on the side of burnout.
Yeah, we met Vicky at South Start this year, and like straight away, you just know she's such a good human, like such a good soul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I caught up with her a few times after that around the startup network, and she's so incredibly passionate, and it's working out ways to convert that passion into getting people on board.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think the other thing that stood out, looking at who won the awards and some of the commentary, is just the number of connected dots now in the ecosystem. Like AWS head of startups, John, who actually presented the award to Deputy, also said that he previously worked at Deputy. And then Matt Beach, who now works at Deputy, he had actually started Startup Daily, like he was one of the founders. And so there's all these connection points we're seeing in the ecosystem where, yeah, this is the signal of a good developing ecosystem where people come out of roles, they bounce into something else, and there's just that evolution.
Yeah, well, Simon, we'll make sure we're there next year.
Yeah, and shout out to Simon, like bloody good event. Like these awards are awesome, and we definitely need to be there.
Well, a lot of the finalists and just early stage companies in general have to have a key ingredient, and that ingredient is persistence. And I saw a post where Jeff Deutsch has put together a little song about persistence, taking some very well-known founders and the words they've used. So what we'll do for the audio-only listeners, see if you can pick the voices and who are helping him sing this tune.
So much about being a successful entrepreneur is just not giving up. The ones that were successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. I actually think determination is probably the biggest piece. It will take over your life. Startups are all consuming, and that is why they say that the most important thing is persistence. Take a listen what they went through. At a very young age, I was heavily involved for long periods, working day and night. The big computer company said this was gonna be nothing, and they turned me down 5 times. People will think your idea is crazy, or they'll think it's lame. It's like staring into the abyss and eating glass. You're gonna make tons of mistakes. One day you feel like you're top of the world, and the next you feel the world's on top of you. There have been so many days where I didn't know if we was gonna make it through.
I think that's going to get stuck in my head, that.
Yeah, gives me Baby Shark vibes.
That's not that bad.
I'm just half expecting Don to learn guitar so he can start producing his own little finds.
Next fireside chat.
I did buy a piano to try and do some kind of intro thing, but that's fallen off on the ADHD bandwagon in the corner. So the most important thing is persistence.
Yeah. Like persistence, absolutely true. But how many that failed were super persistent and continued and ultimately failed? Like of itself, yes, persistence is needed, but there's other things at play.
You don't
I think it's one of those
with a shit idea.
Sorry, say that again, Ash.
You don't want to be persistent with a shit idea. Like that's not going to get you anywhere.
Well, that's the trick, though. There are these times where it's hard to work out, is this truly a good idea or not? And sometimes people give up too early. Sometimes people persist years and decades too long. It can be a difficult thing. I think it's one of these ingredients that's required, but it's not sufficient. And it reminds me of the survivor bias. Like all of the big companies that have survived, they talk about persistence, but actually there was a shitload of other ingredients like market timing, founder connections, access to capital, effective go-to-market strategy. I probably couldn't argue with its top 3, but the most important, I think people, to your point, Ash, just need to be careful that if just persistence was enough, holy moly, there'd be so many more successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's required, but it's not sufficient. But when you look at it like raw talent or raw intelligence versus persistence and hard work, like the genius could sit in their room for the rest of their life and read books. The person that is just determined to go out there and make something for themselves, they might not build the breakthrough technology like OpenAI and bring the next AI ML model out, but they can still get to the top of a domain.
Yeah, I think the risk with these sort of articles is a founder hears it and then anchors to it and almost builds that conviction of, well, we need to be persistent before we'll see the results, and actually ignore the data that's telling them otherwise. I persistently didn't run because I told myself I was recovering, and that turned out to be a whole heap of BS. So I think that's the danger with these, is how we anchor to it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because all of those famous people in that little clip, underlying their persistence, they had some great timing for a product that was ripped out of their hands. Have a look at how Facebook started. Have a look at when Microsoft started. All of those big names that were in there, yes, I have no doubt they worked their asses off. There were difficult times and there was persistence, but all the other ingredients were in place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that it's a good analogy to also like elite sport, where you can be as persistent, determination, have the grit, put in the hard work. But if you're in a cohort of players, who are just out of this world at that time, if you were born 5 years later, 5 years earlier, yes, you may have been on the Australian team, but just your luck that the cohort you're in were as good as they were. And I think there comes a line where persistence, and Jack, I know you and I have chatted a little bit about this, where you have to go, yeah, look, I could keep persevering, but it's inevitable that the line I'm trying to get to is it's just not going to happen. So let's pivot and make something else. And there's a good question. I think Guy Raz, who runs a couple of podcasts on NPR, one of my favorite is How I Built This. And he asked the question at the end of every podcast where he is interviewing a CEO or founder of, whether it's a B2C or B2B business, he says, how much of you think your success is hard work and how much is luck? And it's amazing the amount of people who say, yeah, look, we worked our asses off, to your point, Aaron, but there was a lot of luck. There was timing. There was someone who came into our network who had access to capital and things like that. So I think it's really good to just bring those other aspects to front of mind as well.
Jack persisted with his team, and it was just bad luck that the first captain in 5 years to...
No, 7 years, Don. Come on.
7 years. First captain in years. I mean, if he had proper team players and...
I know.
and a ref that hadn't been bought off. This sort of dovetailed to a thing I saw someone share on LinkedIn, Jen Abel, that's talked about startup maturity. First-time founder, I need more time. Second-time founder, I need more focus. First-time founder, I need to hire a head of sales. Second-time founder, I am the head of sales. First-time founder, let me show you what we've built. Second-time founder, will you show me why this is a problem? And that whole idea of persistence, but with the right energy, the right focus, the right area of alignment, because with that persistence going in the right direction, so often we see success, but if we don't see it going in that right direction, then we have a problem.
Absolutely. I love that, how she's framed those statements. I feel like they should be printed on founders' walls.
100%. No, I agree. And that last one, where you show me why this is a problem, I think is awesome. And I think it also dovetails back into a couple of the articles we talked about on last week's podcast as well, of you don't just build because someone tells you they want all these, fancy different tools, and then they get there and it's actually not solving the problem that they need. It's really getting to the heart of what the problem is before you go and build all the bells and whistles that probably aren't going to solve it.
It's like Vu Tran in the event that he did around the fire pit says, as a GP, I send 27 faxes a day, and to a lot of people outside that looks like a problem, but actually it's not a problem. And if someone was to come along and try and build a product to solve that wasn't integrated into all the other reasons why fax is still the dominant thing, they're going to fail. And therefore you're better off allocating your time to things that are actually a problem, even though it seems to be batshit crazy that there's still a fax machine. Aaron, you asked earlier, what does Jack do with his time? I actually think that this meme is Jack outside of rugby season.
That's Jack on Saturday mornings now.
Yeah. So for those listening at home, it's that meme. What was who was Narcos. The drug lord? Yeah, Narcos. It's the meme from Narcos.
Pablo.
Yeah, where Pablo's just standing looking at the bottom of an empty pool, or sitting looking at a table, like just waiting. But this particular meme was build it and they will come. And that's so often the case with early stage. If we build a really great product, the greatness of the product will be enough for people to pull it out of my hands. Actually, no, it's the opposite way. It's never the best product that wins. It's actually the best marketing, the best sales process that wins. And too often the orientation is too product led.
Yeah, we see this, watch out, a lot, right? Like technical founders in particular who fall in love with their own product, and it's a product in search of a problem to solve. But this is why I love B2B. Like B2B lends itself to actually landing contracts where the enterprise will pay you to build the product for them. So I've had experience with this. Like 3 things I launched, the customer actually paid for the build because it was such a hair on fire problem for them. They were happy to take the risk. And I think of Gaspot with Origin coming in, which essentially funded their first prototypes and the build. And same with Greaseboss, spinning out of a startup weekend and landing an early contract to actually go and build the prototypes out. And as part of I think if you're in B2B, how do you actually go and understand your market well enough, get that engagement where they will take that risk and potentially fund your early prototypes? I heard this framing recently. A B2B investor said, in the enterprise space, to be successful, you either have to add significant revenue to the top of the P&L, save significant operating costs from the bottom, or save them from court and the front page of the newspaper. And I think it's simplistic, but I think we see a lot of stuff where it's indirect in terms of the benefit, but it's also indirect in terms of who's paying for it versus who receives the benefit. And so the budget that something is coming from versus where the benefit lies, that can make a really bloody hard sell. It just increases friction. You've got to navigate internally and help them sell it internally. The more direct you can be in benefit and also to the budget is really critical.
That was a 20 VC one.
Yeah.
I meant to mention that 20 VC one you put in the group chat. I'm going to listen to that probably 5 times.
Yeah, I got to listen to it again because I was taking notes as I was going, but I need to sit at a desk and write notes to that one.
I'll put it in the link for the listeners. It's one with Jason Lemkin. The challenge is, unless you've been in this game for a little while, some of the things he says you could miss. But so many of the lessons that we've learned and continue to learn, he just articulates so well in this game. So I'll put that in there. But like one of the things that popped up for me was there's no such thing as a good deal. If this feels like a good deal, that's a problem. And if you just look at ones where, oh, this is actually a good deal, we've got returns locked away. No, it's actually got to feel a little expensive. The best deals feel a little expensive and they're priced that way for a reason. Good deals, and we'll get to one that looked like a good deal and is no longer. They just never. It's a warning. Anyway, we digress. Ash,
Nothing to.
if you persist and you deliver something of value and you build a great business, you get an exit. An exit then generates liquidity not only for the founders but for the investors as well. And there was an article in Forbes by John Henderson of Airtree that talks about the fact that Australia's startup scene actually has delivered the 3rd highest liquidity behind US and China from new analysis. John says in the article, as recently as 5 years ago, sophisticated LPs had a justifiable reservation about the Australian venture opportunity. The scale of potential outcomes was unclear given a constrained local market and cash returns were nascent. Instead, they placed safer bets into other markets, mainly US, China, and Israel. But today, top Australian managers can show world-class liquidity generated by capital-efficient companies operating at a global scale. Publicly available data speaks for itself and comes as a surprise to many. If we add up the liquid value of venture-backed M&A and IPO outcomes over the past decade, Australia comes in 3rd. How has this happened, he asks. Limited capital, population size, and the tyranny of distance were once seen as barriers for the Australian startups with global ambitions. Those dynamics have now converged into the region's competitive advantage, as knowing how to do more with less is a breeding ground for capital-efficient companies. Atlassian pioneered the B2B product-led growth playbook, and many other Australian unicorns have followed in their footsteps, such as Canva, Linktree, and GoOne. These companies present a compelling case for LPs who want to get their dollars to work harder. Great little article that I think highlights the great opportunity this environment provides.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think of our portfolio company that sold recently, And it's great to be returning capital to investors, particularly in the current climate. But I would have also loved to see them keep going for another 6+ years, because I think that thing's got huge upside potential. And so there has been commentary for a while that Aussie founders tend to exit much earlier than, say, a Silicon Valley counterpart. And it's because we're quite happy to walk away with 20 mil and live happily ever after, because we value lifestyle and all these other things. And I just wonder, is this a measure of the fact that we have that kind of lifestyle culture? But overall, I think it's really positive.
When Jack and I were at a match with a US VC, I just said, when you're not doing VC, what do you do? And he went, oh, no, we work 7 days a week. There's nothing other than VC. Do I misrepresent that, Jack?
No, that's bang on.
Yeah, it is a slightly different cultural
Jack,
environment.
at some point, Jack, I think on a future podcast, you need to share the story of how you introduced yourself to this guy as well.
No, this is a separate dude.
That was a separate one, but that is a classic. Let's do it now. Come on, Jack.
Oh, come on, Jack.
no.
Now I feel like I'm left out.
Oh, so I'd been told that the existing investors were just local high net worths, just from construction, those types of industries. Chatting to this fella, and he said he spent his time between Boulder, Colorado, and Australia. And I was like, oh yeah, like, again, maybe this guy's in tech. And I misheard what he said. He said he's in venture. I thought he said he owned a vegetable store. And I was like, fuck, you spend your time between those two places with a veggie store? It was just, yeah. And then that's all I really got to say to him. And then Don was having a chat to him. So then, like, he must just be thinking, this kid. Like, this kid, man.
Meanwhile, this was one of the original Canva backers and put money in at 3 mil.
Yeah. But like, how did we
What a veggie store? That's all right, Jack. Normally you're our carer, but
Yeah. Normally the scenario is the other way around.
I do think this article is super interesting, though. In particular, there's a couple of thoughts that go through my head on the access to capital. My hypothesis is that we have less high net worth individuals in Australia, percentage of population, as well as just total number. So raising capital and access to capital, you have to work harder as an Aussie founder. So I think that when our deals do get to a point where they are expanding globally, my guess and hypothesis is that they are of higher caliber. The other point I've always had, particularly since moving back to Australia and being in the startup world, is that if you're a founder in Australia, you are always building with the headset of going global or going to APAC. You're not building to solve your market. And I can't say that for US founders. And look, that's also fair because their market is the biggest, most likely, for what they're trying to solve for. But there is a different headset of those founders of what they're looking to solve. And I think because our founders go into something knowing that they're building it globally, they have a broader perspective and they're thinking about how things can evolve, adapt, and scale more rapidly when needed versus other founders who are just like, here is what I'm thinking about, US market only. And then when they do try to expand to the UK or Asia, I feel there is higher friction because they don't actually think about the cultural differences, even if there's the same language, or the work-life balance differences for different products. It makes a big difference in trying to get deals done. But look, I'm very glad I am in Australia and have the work-life balance I have after a few years of 80 to 100 hours. So I am very glad we have that as a culture. I think it also makes us better humans and better investors and better founders because we are holistic in our approach to what we do.
I thought the job description said 120 hours. What? Obviously.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think what we do still pretty well is you have your sprints. There are times where we're still having to deal with stuff at midnight and push through, and then there's a quieter period where you recharge and then go back out. But yeah, it's great to see Australia achieving these results. And I think in talking with that US VC, they're looking at a number of not just Australian businesses, but Queensland businesses, and they really highly rate the founders and the traction and what they've been able to do on the global scale. And it's great to see us getting this inbound interest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just on one more thing, I did a quick GPT search of percentage of population for high net worth. In the US, it's 2.2% of the population, coming out at 7.5 million high net worth individuals. In Australia, that's 0.9% of percentage of population and 234,000 individuals. So if we're just looking at that angel network of people who have the liquid assets of $1 million or above, that can potentially fund our startups, it's a huge disparity.
And to add to that, Ash, like, we're an emerging market, they're an established market. So like, a lot of angels don't even believe that this is an asset class that can return capital yet. So the total size of our pool actually shrinks a lot more.
100%.
Yeah. The entrepreneurial element and understanding of US market versus here, which is predominantly property, construction, mining. Interesting stat, Ash.
Yeah.
And that's
it's
more
GPT,
than $1 million.
So yeah, more than $1 million in liquid assets.
Well, let's change gears a little bit. Just a couple of things popped up during the week in AI. I saw a post from Linus Belliunas, and it says, this is huge. Fintech giant Klana just shut down Salesforce and Workday and has replaced them with simpler tech stack created by AI. This is just after reducing their customer service headcount by 50%, with plans of potentially shrinking Klana's global workforce to around 2,000 employees from the 3,800, all because of AI. This tells us two important things. While many are still skeptical, Klana is massively leveraging AI. And two, Klana is giving yet another masterclass in how to get free marketing ahead of their upcoming IPO. So there's a couple of things here. I smell a little bit of bullshit because there's no detailing. I think it is fair to say that there will be some AI agents and tools that do come in and replace some very expensive sets. But at the same time, Klana's been in a lot of trouble and downsizing the shit out of everything because it's losing a hell of a lot of money. So it's a bit hard to work out what's true here.
Good marketing PR story. But yeah, and this is a data point of one, but it's something we're aware of, right? Like we've talked about as a team, horizontal SaaS in the world of AI, where AI can replicate a product pretty quickly. I was trying to get my kids to focus on study, like when they're doing homework. And I was explaining to them the concept of Pomodoro sprints. And I was about to buy another license for some software on the desktop that would lock down their computer. I'm like, this is stupid. I'll just go to ChatGPT and put in what I wanted. And it wrote a little script that would just run in a browser and do what I wanted it to do. It's like, okay, well, that just saved me spending $50. So I can see with basic stuff, absolutely. But something like this that's embedded, yeah, I'm not so convinced yet.
I think it brings ideas top of mind though. And look, if you have a development team already in-house with maybe a week and some GPT and Claude and whatever else they're using, it seems possible. But I think it just is another article to bring it top of mind of just think about how you can use these tools in your day-to-day life outside of work, like you did, Aaron, but also at work, on how you can make the downtime of having to do admin from 20% to 5%. Leverage these tools and then you're more effective and productive. But yeah, I'd love to see some more detail behind this article.
Well, if you just don't allocate any time to admin, you don't have the problem.
Yeah, it's more of a handball of admin cost onto Aaron, I feel, but
Ash, how do you know it so well so quickly?
EQ.
Well, like the noise on a stereo.
We need an equalizer.
Yeah, it is a data point than one, but at this phase of any new tech, you've got the hype, but then the skeptics do start to come in. I guess I must admit I think things are a little bit ahead of themselves. But there was an article in the AFR that summarized a new book that's come out called Snake Oil. Don't believe the artificial intelligence hype. Now, this book has a whole lot of different case studies and different examples. I thought we'd just go through one quick one because some of this hype can actually affect people significantly. And what tends to happen is early stage companies sometimes, let's say, talk aspirationally about something as if it's already done. This article says misleading claims about the capabilities of AI are rampant and the technology is already causing significant harm according to some computer scientists in this extract from their new book called AI Snake Oil. So one of the examples they list is that in 2017, armed with vast amounts of data, Epic, a company, released an AI product to detect sepsis. It was a plug-and-play tool for hospitals to use with their existing health records. The value proposition was clear. Hospitals could decrease deaths due to sepsis without spending more money on equipment or data collection. AI claimed its model reduced mortality rates due to sepsis in hospitals. In a 2020 interview, Epic CEO Judith Faulkner said, if you put in sepsis AI, 6 hours before the human being can tell that the patient is coming up with sepsis, it can identify sepsis in many cases and save lives. Now, Epic didn't release any peer-reviewed evidence about the model's accuracy. Like many other AI companies, it said the model was proprietary. External researchers could not verify Epic's findings. 4 years after its release, no third-party valuations of the model had existed. Finally, however, in 2021, researchers released their first independent study of the model. They could only do this study because they worked at a hospital that used it. They had hospital records of patients of whom the model was making predictions. Now, what occurred was that the study found that the relative accuracy was actually 63%, which is far worse than the 76 to 83% Epic had claimed. Now, a relative accuracy of 50% means that it's as good as flipping a coin. So 63% relative accuracy means that the model is only slightly better than random. Epic responded to the damning study by highlighting anecdotal evidence from 2 organizations that claimed the model had improved rates. It also noted that tens of thousands of clinicians were using the sepsis model. So if that was the case, surely it can't be that bad. Well, it turned out that while Epic was flaunting its high adoption rates, the company was simultaneously paying hospitals up to $1 million in credits if they satisfied certain conditions. One of the conditions was the use of the sepsis model. In October 22, Epic stopped selling the one-size-fits-all model, instead asked hospitals to train the model on their own patient data. There's AI combining with entrepreneurial enthusiasm, combining with people just accepting that if it's a model, clearly it must work, and turns out to be a whole lot of bullshit.
I think there's going to be more and more of these coming out over the next kind of 24 months. I think it comes down to due diligence on when you're buying a product, and my skeptical opinion that is if someone's not going to be able to walk you through and show you the model's accuracy, then there might be something fishy. Like, yes, it's proprietary, but if you're showing this to a hospital and you're looking to researchers who are going to publish data that if your model is true in its stats will only skyrocket your sales, I feel like that's a questionable opinion on that.
Yeah, I think the other thing for me is the way Epic responded and defended and the data sets they use for that. It's, I think, leaving aside AI for a moment, I think this is a watch out for founders. And it reminds me, remember Vu Tran was talking about they would have enterprise and SME customers subscribing who weren't engaging on the platform, so they weren't getting value from the platform. And he said that they would actually get them to unsubscribe. He didn't want them as customers because they weren't extracting value. Whereas I think for a lot of founders, making sure we're measuring for the right thing. And if we're genuinely not delivering value, the risk there is at some point they will churn when the cycle gets tough, which can really affect your forecasting and numbers. But if they're not getting value, it'll affect upsell, contract expansion, your NRR figures, your customer testimonials, what they're saying in market about your product and everything else. So I think making sure you're looking at the right data of, are we actually adding value, and knowing what that value is as well, because often we see founders price disparate to the value they're actually delivering.
In the article, that sort of bottom left, it says benign on the horizontal axis and works on the vertical axis. So things like autocomplete, code generation, image generation for stock photography, that's like benign AI outcomes, and it works. But on the horizontal axis, going further and further, that's where benign turns to harmful. And on the vertical axis going up, where works turns into snake oil. And so we get into the snake oil space around prediction, video, cheating, and harmful is where facial recognition for mass surveillance, criminal risk prediction. So it's just trying to plot where things are at the moment. The article also talked about AI. I remember like 3 or 4 years ago was talking about like especially radiology was going to be decimated by AI because AI would be able to pick up all of these things. And a lot of the AI companies even called for stop training new radiologists. It's not fair on them because they won't have a job. And now there's a global shortage of radiologists because the AI is a long way away being able to predict this stuff.
I think the takeaway here for investors is just anytime we have a new technology, there's always going to be a wave of bad actors. It's inevitable. Like right now it's AI, before that it was blockchain. Like you can plot this just going back. So it's just really getting an understanding if we are playing in a space where FOMO is evident, like it's doing your diligence on all the companies that you're investing into.
Yeah, and even if they're not a bad actor, just the hype cycle. And this is still even now with blockchain, the number of times I see blockchain technology as part of a startup's product stack when they don't need blockchain. Just any database would do for the use case. And I see, we definitely are seeing this now with AI, like everything references AI. And yes, it's benign in terms of outcome, but there's a lot of hype in it.
So speaking of everything references AI, on Friday I shared with you one of my angel portfolio companies, Bluejay AI. So the .ai obviously meant that it was the real deal, went into liquidation. What Bluejay AI did, so this is from the original investment, Bluejay AI consolidates and identifies in real time, 24/7, the root cause patterns of breaches and has built a machine learning algorithm to determine potential breaches as well as recommended potential action. So this is in like the cybersecurity space. Customers are signaling this is a game-changing solution. And so the problem was, by the looks of it, so I'm only analysing the liquidators report plus talking to some other shareholders that were closer to the situation, the technology didn't yet do what it said on the label. Plus, they simultaneously tried to grow too fast. They managed to bring in something like 7 million in capital. The total credit is about 8 million or 9 million. It was just a simultaneous technology, not quite right, going after too many verticals, hiring too quickly, hiring too many. And this is probably my fastest failure. The investment was November 2023, so we didn't even make 12 months. So I guess that's how AI is at the speed of the cycle.
Yeah, reading through this, Don, and knowing you had invested, I was a little surprised because all the founders are ex-consultants and like top-tier consulting firms and banks, and that's not your usual style.
I think I might just lead this part of the program, Aaron. I don't like your tone. I don't like your questions. No, it is true. So on this one, this is where portfolio approach. So my venture investing is through the corporate entities is around about 10 times the early stage allocation. So this early stage stuff is 10% of what you'd put into a venture deal because it's pre-seed. If I think back to my thinking at the time, this was actually pitched by an investor that I have a lot of respect for. So it is what it is, right? I can't say anything other than I anchored to that individual, but there are plenty of deals that people pitch that don't go this way at the same time. If I recall, though, we did have them pitch us. We did raise that ex-consulting space because it doesn't have a high correlation of success where big groups of ex-consultants come from the big environments with all of the resources and then have the ability to pull off a successful startup, but don't want to turn off and alienate the consulting listeners of this podcast, but that's just the data.
Yeah, I think I shared with you boys one of the big accelerator programs that focuses on identifying potential founders to go and start things. They have a rule, they won't accept ex-consultants in because they just found they don't get shit done. But I think your point, Don, about the relative check size of your pre-seed seed investments versus the space we play in. And for us, we focus pre-series A, series A for a reason, because we think that, that risk-adjusted reward profile. But I think that's a really good point for investors to think about.
I think when I shared it in the chat, I think the best bit of it when Maren said, "Oh, sorry to hear that, Don," and I said, "Don't worry about it. It's all part of the game." And she said, "Yes, but I've recently been that coming in and showing empathy to begin with is better than being a smartass. And I thought that was classic. Well, let's get to some Sharts. Let me bring it up here. I thought this was a good one. So this is someone in bed in a hotel calling the front desk. Hi, I'd like a wake-up call, please. And the lady on the front counter says, okay, sending out millions of AI-generated emails will not fix your GDM issues.
It's so good.
I've got one. It's not a tribe one, but I'm on the board of through the family office. And I remember the board meeting where they were just so excited because they'd found an AI video creating tool. And now just using text, they could create all of these sales outbound videos that they could personalize to people. And they were just going to flood emails and LinkedIn. And I was just like, this is going to be a catastrophe. And to finish the story, it was a catastrophe.
Love it.
It's gold.
I'm just thinking, imagine if there was wake up call as a service and you actually got that type of advice.
I think there's an evergreen meme here. We've got I'd like a wake up call, please. No follow on investment with these metrics.
I think you should keep this on handy for the future.
Yeah, I can see that. This is less a chart, more some random data, but tech revenue per employee, starting with Microsoft at $1.1 million an employee, Google 1.7, Meta 2, Apple 2.4, Netflix 2.6, Craigslist 13.9, OnlyFans 30 million per employee. So OnlyFans has 1.3 billion in revenue, 42 employees, and for its founder, I think I saw, has paid 600 million in dividends
For the year.
Pardon?
I think that was for the year as well. Like that was...
Oh, for the year.
Yeah. Like it's incredible how much money he's generated.
Craigslist, and yeah, 42 employees runs OnlyFans. Craigslist has 50 employees. Apple is the behemoth there, 161,000 employees, and still the average is 2.4 million.
It's crazy.
And look at Craigslist, all of 50 employees, and such a terrible interface.
Oh, it's horrible. They're the only ones who have survived when you think about all the other competitors in that space.
Yeah.
This was an interesting chart. This is going back to 2008. Overseas and domestic VC fundraising for China. This is in billions. Starts, at 8 billion in 2008, goes all the way over 50, but then has dropped down to, what is that, a rounding error of about 1 billion? That's like the biggest jump up and jump down I've seen of any chart for a long time. So something's happening in China where not only is the domestic investment fallen off a cliff, but people aren't bringing money in.
Do you think, Don, this is also potentially because founders are leaving China and going to the US or the UK to launch businesses, so there's less deal flow there?
Yeah, could be. Yep.
Well, the government keeps arresting founders and therefore foreign investors don't want to deploy capital, and the US keeps blocking Chinese software. I don't know. There's so many things at play there.
So many elements.
Yeah. Now, for Jack especially, who doesn't watch movies, Ash, we're about to find out your level of movie knowledge. Tom Boston did this post. On Friday, he asked people to turn movies into B2B sales quotes. And so here's a few of them. So the first one was Leadless in Seattle. Have you got any leads? No. So Jack, that's a movie called Sleepless in Seattle. A famous movie.
Thank you.
Hanks comes back again with You've Got Spam Mail.
This one is so good.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. The real movie is The Usual Suspects, whereas here it's The Usual Prospects, and it has no budget, unsubscribe, not interested, wrong number, never contact me again. That sounds usual. Ghosted instead of ghost. Did you get my last email? And then in the comments sections, there was a couple. Good lead hunting instead of goodwill hunting. Instead of behind enemy lines, it was behind enemy pipelines. Then I still know what you did last quarter. That is so good.
Oh, that is so good.
This, I thought, just was a little bit funny. It's two pencils. One's a sharp-looking pencil and one's a blunt, clearly used. And it just says, it's easy to look sharp when you don't do shit. Now, obviously, our listeners will know that I love me some Taylor Swift. So this is slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it is not a bad point, right? Before you let Taylor Swift influence your vote, so Taylor just came out supporting Harris, may I just remind you that 90% of her hit songs are about choosing the wrong person.
And that is true.
I did have a couple of others that I haven't had time to put in, so I'm going to keep them till next week. I think that brings us to the end.
Always love those Sharts.
So what are we looking forward to? Ash?
I've got a pretty quiet weekend. Just a bit of central markets. But besides that, really just getting this new deal out and getting to chat to our investors and starting to build a relationship with them, I'm pretty excited about. So, yeah, let's get going.
Jack, you'll just be staring at an empty pool.
Yeah, at least on Sunday I am. But Saturday I'm helping a mate. He's pouring a driveway, so I'm labouring for him.
Sweet.
That's not a mate. Like people say, I'm helping a mate do X, Y, and Z. It's like that sounds like an abusive relationship.
No, he's paying me as a labourer. He needs a hand. So
have you done this before?
That's a great mate.
So my gap year, Ash, I was concreting. So
that's good to know. I'll keep that in the back of my pocket.
Yeah, like my skills are only as good as a labourer. I can't screed, but
I'm looking forward to leaving the farm in about 90 minutes and heading home where the concreter will have finished the slab, allegedly. I've been watching it on the security system, so we'll see.
Well, I'm looking forward to, I get my kiddies back this weekend, and next week we're going to duck up to Palm Cove for a bit, so they will get to enjoy that before the house sells, if it ever sells.
Why did Child Services take them this time?
For listeners, they're with their mum.
Have you got an offer on Palm Cove?
We've had 3 offers, but all conditional on the sale of another property. So we're hanging in there, and not quite where we want the number to be yet.
All right. Thanks, team.
Awesome.
And we'll see you online in a few hours.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. See ya.